When exploring an exhibition, whether online or in person at an art gallery, you may see the term after in reference to the author or authors of an art piece. Simply put, this means that the piece of art is a copy or reproduction of that artist's original work. Whilst in most modern contexts this can be seen as a negative, prior to the popularization of detailed and color photography, it was often the best way for artists to distribute their work to a wider audience. All of the 18th century prints in our exhibition are after paintings by female artists, and thanks to online exhibitions and collections, we can connect and compare the prints with the images which inspired them. Unfortunately, in some cases, the original paintings haven't survived to the present day or can't be accessed by the public, such as Cosway's The Hours and Kauffman's Cupid binding a Goliath from our display. This in itself highlights the power of print in spreading images and cementing a legacy, as there are several collections with other versions of the same prints held by the University Library. However, one painting which is still available to see is Kauffman's Telemachus and Mentor in the island of Calypso, which this presentation will be talking about. It's currently at the Met in New York. Angelica Kauffman was a Swiss artist who worked for most of her career in Italy and England in the 18th and early 19th century. She was one of the only two female founders of the Royal Academy and is known for producing history and portrait paintings. This style was unpopular for women artists at the time, as it was deemed too ambitious, and it was just one of a series of obstacles placed in front of female makers. Another was their exclusion from live classes, demonstrated in the famous portrait by Johann Zoffany depicting the Royal Academians. Kauffman and Mary Moser, the two female founders of the Academy, are represented by paintings on the wall, whereas every other male member is represented in person. The print of this painting in the collection was made by Francesco Bartolozzi, himself a founding Royal Academian too. His career bears some similarity to Kauffman's own, as an artist who studied in Italy before moving to London, and then becoming part of the creation of the Royal Academy. Unlike Kauffman, however, his work primarily lay in engraving. Engravers were barred from Royal Academy admission, but Bartolozzi's profile was so high that he was allowed to join as a painter regardless. Overall, the two gained both enough fame and respect for their skill to overcome some of the prejudices against them, but were always on the outside looking in of the core clique of the Royal Academy. The print itself is executed using a technique known as stipple engraving, where fine dots were impressed into the print with a pointed burin, building up layers and detail through the size and density of the markings. Bartolozzi himself was a pioneer of the technique, which created a much softer and smoother effect compared to other techniques such as line engraving or etching. The original painting by Kauffman, Telemachus and the Nymphs of Calypso, was made in 1782. An oil on canvas, it is one of several of her paintings of Greek myths, including The Sorrow of Telemachus, which depicts another scene from the same legend. In our painting, though, Telemachus was the son of Odysseus, and he and Mentor, his guide, secretly Athena in the guise of a man, are found by Calypso and her nymphs after being shipwrecked on her island of Ogygia. The bright spots of colour in the painting, such as the flower garland offered by the nymph to Telemachus, are much more eye-catching in this painting compared to the original monochrome print, as you can see here. Another difference between the two are the titles. Whilst Kauffman's painting is presented as showing Telemachus and the nymphs, the engraving is entitled Telemachus and Mentor, taking the focus away from the overtly female figures in the print. The painting is intrinsically linked with the ideas of gender and identity, as aside from Athena being in a male form as Mentor, Telemachus also struggles with living up to his father's legacy, and Calypso in the Odyssey notably railed against the double standard of female deities being forbidden from having affairs with mortals, and the persecution of women for trying to pursue sexual freedom was very common in the Victorian period as well. Several of Kauffman's other subjects involved gender disguise, and Athena, or her Roman counterpart Minerva, is also a frequent theme. Within her collection of works, it might not be significant, but it shows at least to be a topic in which she was interested, and definitely somewhat applicable to her life and having to work in a very male-dominated field. Relying on a man to distribute the paintings, even though Kauffman and Bartolozzi did have a long and profitable relationship, and in a manner which reduces to an extent the impact of the piece, was just one compromise and negotiation she had to make to succeed. However, it's worth noting that this came alongside her unwillingness to be ridiculed and mocked, as attested to by several Royal Academy letters and briefings. And this stubbornness and refusal to back down in the face of adversity is almost certainly part of what made her such an overwhelmingly successful artist. As readers of replicant prints then, We have to be aware that even when coloured, the overall effect is often very different from painting to paper. From line hardness to scale, bearing in mind that most prints are almost a third of the size of their originals, and even the details which might come out better in one format or the other. The fact that such a quantity and quality of prints of female makers exist, though, is a testament to their famous success as artists, that so many people wish to even own a copy of their work, that more and more pieces were commissioned and survive to the present day.